you all know that I am about all things, embracing all things feminine, right? Like, and women dropping into their feminine bodies and embracing their feminine nature and like all the feminine. And I've also been pretty vocal as of late about how I feel regarding, hey, other me, how I feel regarding, you know, this idea of love and light. And I want to clarify my position a little bit on this because, you know, it's easy to get on and just be like, fuck love and light, that's stupid, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I think that love and light has served a purpose. And I think that love and light is a, you know, it's a way for us to just kind of embrace our positivity, which is not a bad thing. You know, I know that there's a lot of women out there that call themselves light workers. And was really interesting because Laureen Malley did a post in the Woo Collective yesterday where she was talking about being a spirit worker. And I really loved the term. I loved how she explained it. I love how she defined it. And it was just so much more, I think this is hilarious because my husband sits there and shushes him, and like the shushing is way louder than the kid. Six o'clock at my house with a child screaming bloody murder. Hold on one second. He's taking him upstairs. Four-year-olds. Yeah, I say witching hour and then like all hell breaks loose. Okay, now that we have some peace back again. So, oh, now I totally lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I was talking about love and light. Oh, spirit worker. So I loved how she was defining spirit worker. And to me, it resonated like so much more deeply than the word light worker. You know, I think that the term love and light has gone on to be so cliche, and so it just feels very surface to me. And it feels like bypassing. And, you know, we've been having multiple conversations about, you know, spiritual bypassing and white privilege and all of these things. And, you know, love and light is a term that is really beginning to feel to me like spiritual bypassing. And so I want to talk a little bit tonight about this idea of the dark feminine and why it's so important for us to embrace it. And, you know, the dark feminine exists within all of us, within men and within women. It, you know, it exists within both of us. And so, but I work with women, so I'm going to be talking about women. And maybe at some point I will branch out and do this work with men as well. But hey, Kimberly. But, you know, for now, I'm going to talk about the dark feminine, and I'm going to talk about it as it relates to women and the feminine. So, geez, it's crazy down in here right now. Hey, Lori. So there's the quote that says, where there is light, there is shadow, and where there is shadow, there is light. And, you know, one cannot exist without the other. So it's part of the reason why I think I recoil away from love and light, because love and light implies that we should ignore or bypass the darkness. And to me, there is no existence without the darkness. There is no fully embodied feminine without embracing the darkness. So to me, like, what does this mean? Like, what is the dark feminine? What does it mean? To me, this is where the soul creation, that deep soul magic that I talk about, or the soul creation, it is from deep within. It's that deep inner work. Those are the places that we access when we access our dark feminine. To me, there cannot be any spiritual growth without deconstructing our stories and facing and integrating our shadow. And so, we talk about this wanting to have spiritual growth and wanting to have expansion and wanting to raise the collective consciousness and all these things that we talk about. And, my experience has been that through my darkest times, through the embracing of the darkest parts of myself, I experience the most growth. I experience the most refining. The diamond becomes shinier, if you will. So embracing that, like really truly embracing that, is owning and journeying, owning or embodying or journeying with the dark feminine. So, I think we are taught, especially as women, to repress those parts of ourselves, to not let those parts of ourselves show. There's a whole nother conversation that we could have about, the 7 feminine archetypes and the archetype of the whore, and how as women, we just are taught to really be one thing in the light and another thing in the dark. And it's a huge, inner conflict that many of us struggle with. But, the thing I know is that the more we try to escape our darkness, the more it overcomes us. The more we repress those things, the more we choose to ignore or hide from our shadow parts or the darker part of us, the more it comes out sideways, right? So, just like externally, you can't lose your shadow. Like you literally cannot lose your shadow. You can't lose your internal shadow either. And, when we repress it, when we hide it, when we minimize our shadow, that's when it comes out sideways and in unhealthy ways. So to me, let's look at beginning to embrace that part of ourselves. That part of the dark feminine is our dark, our unconscious, our mysterious, our unpredictable sides. And to me, the darkness is our depth. It's where we get our depth of character. It is our life force energy. It's our fire. It's our passions. It's our desires. It's our power. We harness all of that from the dark feminine, from the place of the dark feminine. My belief is that she is how integrating her and embracing her is how we reclaim our place from the patriarchy. It's how we create how we begin to create the even balance, how we begin to get that pendulum to swing back to the other side. And it was interesting because my husband was saying, it's like swinging one way or the other, and we really need to find the balance, which I agree with. But I believe that in order to reclaim our place or to take that back, that we truly need to embrace that. We have to embrace her. She is how we get there. We don't get there through love and light. Love and light is not going to change these types of dynamics because the dark feminine resides within all of us. And the more we repress her, the more she shows up and the more she comes out sideways. And she comes out sideways as irritability and lack of patience and short-temperedness, and those are the results, right, of not feeling the feels and not allowing us to experience a full range of emotion and not tap into the perceived darker emotions, the heavier, the more dense emotions. So, the dark feminine, she speaks her mind, and she embraces her emotions. She embraces all of them, and she speaks her mind, and she's not afraid to speak her mind, and she doesn't censor herself. And I believe that all of the women on this planet could use a little more of that in their lives. We embrace her to become embodied. So I just, this is becoming something that I'm like, it's just, as usual, it's like something starts kind of flowing through me, and it becomes so important for me to feel like I need to share, because what I'm seeing right now is women being very lost and seeking knowledge. And I feel like some of us in this online space or in this spiritual space do a huge disservice to the women who are seeking, because when we tell them only to access love and light, or we tell them it's all about love and light, we are taking them down a path that is not complete and is not whole. And it's a path where you won't ever find full fulfillment, because until you embrace both sides and you integrate your darkness and your shadow, that, that path is somewhat fabricated. It's not authentic. It's not whole, certainly not whole. And so I think that, we have a responsibility to talk about these things. And, the other thing that I find is that, women are seeking knowledge and seeking knowledge and seeking knowledge, and they are looking for something to fill the hole or to fill the void. And they want and desire to discover their purpose on this planet, and they want to be doing their purpose work. But when they are not given the opportunity to access the dark feminine, or to access the dark, unconscious, mysterious, unpredictable part of themselves, it's very difficult to discover those things. And so what we have happen is we have women spending tens of thousands of dollars to take a spiritual journey that's very one-dimensional, very one-sided, and never finding fulfillment, never stepping forward into truly owning their purpose and their passions. And, the passion part of it is the dark feminine. That is the deep soul magic. That is the desire, the longing, the wanting. That all resides within the dark feminine, and that place is where we need to go to access that. So, it's not that. And just as I say that, this black cat is walking down my. You can't make this shit up. I should flip my phone around and show you guys. I don't have a cat, by the way, but there's a black cat walking down my patio right now. I think it's gonna go out in the back. Let's see. So funny. She's like, yep, here I am, the dark feminine. Confirmation for you. So yeah, it's just is it your black cat? I don't know if it's your black cat. If so, she's a long, long way from home. I think that many of us are drawn to the darker, right? Like the mysterious and the exotic, like we're drawn to that. As in a voyeuristic tendency, like we want to watch it, we want to see it, we want to know about it, we want to watch all the vampire movies, and we want to, know about all the paranormal experiences and things like that. But when it comes to looking at those parts of ourselves, we're like, oh no, I can't be that. I have to be this, or I'm supposed to be this, or I should be this. And the truth is that we all have that exotic, erotic, mysterious part of ourselves. And I think that is how we find true fulfillment, is to take that part and take the lighter parts of our personality and merge the two together. And then you get this rich, juicy, soul conscious, rad life, right? We have women spending tens of thousands of dollars on a spiritual journey that's one-sided and leaves them unfulfilled. Yeah. Was that? We need to go back and read it. What were my exact words? I don't know, but thank you for that, because that's, you know what I mean? And that's the point. It's like, go spend the money, spend money on yourself. You know, I will continue to, I will always spend money on my spiritual development, because I believe that once you start this journey and once you start to get a taste of what, you know, expanding your consciousness and expanding your spirituality is like, then you can't ever know that, and you can't ever get, there's, you know, there, you want more. You always want more. To me, I'm like constantly learning and reading, and like, you know, had another book show up at my house yesterday, which is interesting. And it's just like, you know, it takes me back into the past. It's like, as I've started to revisit this dark feminine, you know, a lot of the hoodoo and voodoo stuff that I have studied, and the dark goddesses, these things are all coming up again. And so I ordered a Zora Neale Hurston book about Haitian voodoo that I haven't read before. And I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so fascinating. Like, I was down the rabbit hole into something, trying to learn about, you know, reading about the dark natures in ourselves, reading about all of this. And, you know, it's important to become whole, I think that's our quest, right? We all go on this path. We search this knowledge with the desire to become whole, to fill a void, to expand. And we don't do that with just love and light. It's not possible, because there are those parts of ourselves. We have a shadow. We have a shadow side. And we also have those deep soul level desires. We have all of that inside of us. It all resides inside of us. And I just believe to ignore that is completely asinine. And I think that as people that are directing people in spiritual journeys, whether you call yourself a coach or a mentor or a, you know, guide or a guru, whatever word you choose to label yourself and to give yourself, I feel that it's very irresponsible to not talk about both sides. And I also know that the reason a lot of these people aren't talking about it is because they haven't done the work themselves. They haven't explored the work themselves. You know, and it's interesting because I've been talking in my Full Soul Alchemy program, my group coaching program, with the women about that, you know, Kali shows up in your life at certain times. And, you know, for these spiritual leaders that are out there that are preaching love and light, like, Kali is going to show up for them sooner or later, and they are going to have to face that shadow. They are going to have to look at that within themselves. And so I feel like I do a disservice to my clients and to my community if I don't talk about these things, because I know how rewarding and how fulfilling life can be when you embrace these things and when you do this work from the get-go. So it's not, you know, waiting until you're 3 or 4 years into your spiritual journey to begin to do this work. You can start doing this work right away. This work is vitally important. You know, we have this resurgence of the divine feminine. We have this resurgence of talking about the feminine, talking about the goddess, you know, bringing this back into the mainstream. And that is important. It is important to begin that work and to talk about that and to shine the light on that. And at the same time, when we don't discuss all the facets of the feminine, of the divine feminine, of the dark feminine, of like all of the feminine, then the journey isn't complete. The journey can't be complete until we look at that part. So to me, I'm like, jump into that stuff right away and be constantly looking at it, because it is constantly changing and constantly evolving. So Kristen says, would you say looking, sorting through your shit and doing work on your shadow side are similar? Or is there a bit of difference? So, you know, I truly believe that deconstructing your stories is a part of embracing the dark feminine. Looking at that. So, you know, looking at sorting through your shit, deconstructing your stories, all of that to me is kind of this one category, and it is an element. To me, the other element that I feel is really important is looking at the shadow emotions or the shadow archetypes of the feminine archetype, right? The shadow side of the feminine archetype. Looking at those, because within there resides the gold. Inside of there is the diamond. So it's, you know, being told as little girls that we're too emotional or we're too sensitive and that we shouldn't be expressing rage and we shouldn't be expressing anger, and women are supposed to be nurturers and women are supposed to be caretakers and they're supposed to be ladylike, and they're, you know, all these things that we're supposed to do. So we're taught very young to repress and hide and minimize the shadow parts of ourselves. And, you know, whether that is our sexuality, our sexual desires, our desires, period, our anger, our sadness, our guilt, our, you know, there's all these emotions that we don't fully allow ourselves to feel. And then as a result, we start curtailing the other emotions. So then we're not fully expressing joy, and we're not fully expressing happiness, and we're not, you know, we're not laughing out loud. We're refraining that because we don't want to be too loud. And it's, you know, to me, it's this vicious cycle. So when we just embrace the feminine in all her facets, in all her forms, in all her force of nature, destructive and creative glory, then we can truly begin to feel whole. We can begin to understand what it means to embrace feminine energy, because when we're just embracing one side, we have no idea, especially the feminine, especially because the feminine is meant to be this wild, unstable energy. We're not supposed to be stable. We're not supposed to be the stem. We're not supposed to be the rock, the what's the word that I'm looking for? It starts with an S. Stoic. We're not supposed to be stoic. You know, we're supposed to be sensitive. We're supposed to be emotional. We're supposed to change our minds every other minute and embrace that. And a lot of that is looked at as negative. And so as a result, we stuff, we minimize, we hide. And then it comes out sideways as anxiety or anger or depression or short-temperedness or mean-spiritedness. And then we're mean girls, and then we treat each other horribly, and we have crab bucket mentality and like all this bullshit. So it's just like, if we just stopped with all of that and decided to embrace all the parts of ourselves, and learn why truly there is no bad. There are no bad emotions. I love Bernadette Pleasant, one of my mentors, says, I'm going to butcher it. I need to find it's like, there are no good or bad emotions, just feelings needing to be expressed. Something along those lines. Bern, I probably just butchered your thing, but you guys get the gist of what I was trying to say. And it's really impactful, right? Like, there are no good or bad emotions. Literally. No such thing. So as this has been coming up, and as so goddess energy has been showing up a lot lately for me again, which is, you know, it had come and then it had left, and now it's back again in full effect. And as I was, I don't even know why I needed to do this. I mean, I'm definitely working in my full soul alchemy program right now. It's month 2, and it's called The Temple, and it's about all things feminine body and feminine nature and stepping into your feminine. And so, it's been on my mind, certainly, because I've been writing content and I've been talking to the women in my groups about it. But there is a stirring in me, certainly, to begin to step into talking about some of this dark goddess energy again. And in fact, my very first goddess workshop I ever did was discovering your dark goddess, and it was awesome. And I can't remember how many classes were in that series, but as I was as I was putting my thoughts together for this live stream tonight, I got a hit that I needed to do a dark goddess series. But it's more than that. So for me, it's going to be more than a dark goddess series. It is going to be a journey with the dark feminine. It's going to be journeying. So in this series, it's going to be a 5-class series. It's going to be over 10 weeks. And we are going to really look at the archetypes of the dark feminine. The feminine archetypes, and then we're really going to look at the dark side of those archetypes and how they play into our life and how we can embrace them and how we can embody them so that they lead to a more fulfilled life. And we learn so much through the dark goddess energy, and how to apply it and how to call upon that and how to, whether you take it as a myth, whether you take it as whatever your spiritual practice is, whatever your spiritual belief is around goddess energy, there's so much to be learned from it on either side. It's like, if you are in the practice of literally calling upon deities and creating altars, great. If not, and you want to simply look at it as that energy is a portion of your psyche, great. There's so much to be learned from exploring these stories and this information about these goddesses. And so the ones that, I knew right away, like when the thought came in my mind, I was like, oh, I already know who we're covering. It's going to be Kali, it's going to be Sekhmet, it's going to be Hecate, and it's going to be Lilith. So it's going to be those 4 goddesses. We will be reviewing in depth the feminine archetype and the dark side of that. So it's basically going to be a 10-week journey into the dark feminine. And, the deep soul magic is basically what this series is going to be about. So for those of you in my all course, this is not going to be included. This is a different thing. This is a series, of things. And so it's so Lilith to me is, me too, just so drawn to Lilith, right? Like the original dark feminine. And so it's going to be amazing. Like I'm super excited. So we're going to start the week of July 23rd. I will be back from spiral practitioner training and I will be in Bali, and we'll be so ready to dive into all the juicy dark goddess goodness. And we will have class every other week. So it'll go 10 weeks and you'll have an opportunity to do some assignments, but they're not going to be super labor intensive. This is really going to be about, receiving transmissions. We're going to do some goddess channeling. It's going to be looking at ourselves at a deep soul level, but it's not going to be like some of my other things where it's like you're doing tons and tons and tons of journaling. This really is intended to help you start your journey that you will always continue with the dark feminine, to step out of this idea of love and light and just be in it, right? Like be in the dark feminine.